You've got so much on your plate and only so much bandwidth. So why should working on your culture be at the top of your list of priorities instead of at the bottom? In this video, I'll answer that question by giving you the top 6 reasons that great organizations choose to make culture a priority. See how many of these apply to you. The first reason is to win more business. Most of us are in pretty commoditized industries where whatever we say makes us different really isn't. If I looked at your competitors and the claims that they make about their product or service, I'll bet it wouldn't sound much different than what you say about yours. And even if your product or service is different, how long do you think that's going to last? How long will it be until your competitors copy you? And then you're back to square one. But if you could somehow get your people to be better than your competitors' people in how they work with customers, how they work with each other, even how they work with vendors, not only would that be the biggest competitive advantage you could create in a commoditized world, but I'd argue that it's the most sustainable advantage because it's so darn hard to copy. And that's all driven by your culture. The second reason is to attract and retain the best people. We're all in a talent war, looking for the best people and hoping to hold on to the good ones that we already have. Before the pandemic, unemployment was at almost an all-time low. It's hard to find good people. And think about this effect of the pandemic. With everybody getting used to working remotely, you're now competing for talent with companies not just in your area, but literally around the world. And every employment study you look at says that one of the biggest reasons that people choose to go to work somewhere and stay there is the culture of the organization. And while that's always been true, it's even more true for the younger generation entering the workforce today. Culture is everything for them. All right, the third reason that companies prioritize culture is for the impact it has on productivity and performance. Quite simply, people who are more engaged, more aligned, and more motivated will work harder, longer, and better than those who aren't. Creating an engaged workforce is how you unlock all that untapped potential, that discretionary effort that's inside every one of your people. And here's the amazing thing. It almost all drops to the bottom line. Think of it this way. You're paying people the same amount. If everybody was just 10% more productive, you'd be that much more profitable. Having a high-performing culture makes you more money. All right, the fourth reason that companies get serious about this is to preserve their culture in times of rapid growth or expansion. You see, when your company was small, you didn't used to have to think about this stuff so much. You just set a good example, and people around you picked up the vibe, and they followed your lead. But when your company goes from 10 or 20 people to maybe 50 or 100, or you open another location, or you make an acquisition or two, all of a sudden, they're not all seeing you anymore. Your example is no longer enough. And if you don't have some more systematic way to drive and embed your culture, you become at significant risk of losing all those things that made you so special when you were smaller. The fifth reason to focus on your culture is to preserve and grow it when you're going through some type of a leadership transition. In family businesses, this often takes the form of one generation of the family taking over from the previous one. But as we see this in non-family businesses as well, as so many baby boomers are hitting their 60s and 70s, they're passing their companies to the next generation of leaders. If you can't codify, teach, and embed the principles that drove your company's success for the past generation, how will you ensure your company's success long into the future? And the sixth reason to focus on your culture is perhaps the most pressing one for most companies. It's one brought on by the pandemic. One of the biggest concerns I hear from leaders today, especially those who've invested heavily in their culture, is how do we preserve our culture with so many of our people working remotely? If your culture was mostly a result of people being together and the vibe they created from sheer physical proximity, well, you're going to be up a creek with large portions of your workforce working remotely. And even when the pandemic is behind us, remote work isn't going away. So we better figure out some way to deal with it if we don't want to see our culture crumble. So let's review those 6 reasons again. Number 1, to create differentiation and win more business in a commoditized marketplace. Number 2, to attract and retain the best people. Number 3, to increase productivity and the bottom line. Number 4, to protect your culture in times of rapid growth. Number 5, to manage through a leadership transition. And number 6, to preserve your culture when people are working remotely. All of these are reasons to make working on your culture one of the biggest priorities this year. But what does it mean to work on your culture? It means implementing a culture operating system like the one that we teach in CultureWise. If you'd like to learn more about how to do that, check out some of our other videos or just give us a call. We're here to help.